The air in Amelia Vance's room was always still, heavy with the scent of antiseptic and expensive, unread books. Sunlight filtered through sheer silk curtains, painted muted patterns on the Persian rug, but it never seemed to reach the girl herself. Amelia, once a whirlwind of vibrant energy, a competitive equestrian, and a budding artist, was now a still life, confined to a custom-built bed that hummed with silent machinery. A year ago, a freak riding accident had snapped her world, and her spine, in two, C4, C5, complete. The doctors, the best money could buy, had delivered the verdict with somber finality: paralysis from the neck down. Her father, Richard Vance, a man whose empire spanned continents and whose net worth was measured in billions, had spared no expense. His sprawling mansion, a fortress of glass and steel nestled in the exclusive hills, had been transformed into a state-of-the-art medical facility. The world's leading neurologists, physical therapists, and specialists had paraded through Amelia's room, each offering a sliver of hope, a new experimental treatment, or, more often, a gentle confirmation of the grim prognosis. Richard, a man accustomed to conquering every challenge, felt utterly powerless. His daughter, his only child, was trapped, and his billions, for the first time, were useless. Amelia, at 19, had retreated into herself. Her once bright eyes now held a distant, wary look. The endless parade of medical professionals, the forced shift, the pity in her father's gaze. It all felt like a suffocating blanket. She rarely spoke, communicated mostly through blinks and a faint, almost imperceptible shake of her head. The world outside her window, once hers to command, was now a cruel, unreachable panorama. One blustery Tuesday, a stark contrast to the usual polished professionals appeared at the mansion's imposing gates. John Carter was not a doctor, nor a therapist, nor a specialist of any kind. He was a single dad from the other side of the city, a man who worked 2 jobs, as a carpenter by day and a caregiver for special needs children in the evenings, to put food on the table for his spirited wheelchair-bound daughter Lily. John's hands were calloused, his clothes practical, and his face, though lined with fatigue, held an unwavering kindness in his deep-set eyes. He'd heard about Amelia Vance through a local charity network he volunteered with, a whisper of the tragic accident and the billionaire's desperate search for a cure. Most people heard the story and saw only the unbridgeable chasm between their lives and the Vances. John, however, saw something else. He saw a young woman in pain, and a father consumed by helplessness. He knew that pain. He lived with it every day, not just Lily's physical limitations, but the emotional weight of a child's struggle. And he also knew, from years of navigating Lily's world, that healing wasn't always about cutting-edge technology or miracle drugs. Sometimes it was about connection, about finding the spark, about seeing the person beyond the paralysis. He'd spent days debating, wrestling with his own reservations. What could he, a simple carpenter, possibly offer a billionaire's daughter that the world's leading experts couldn't? But the image of Amelia, isolated and despairing, gnawed at him. He remembered Lily's darkest days, the moments when she almost gave up. He remembered the small, unconventional breakthroughs that had pulled her back. He had to try. He walked up to the imposing gates, a worn folder clutched in his hand. The security guards, initially amused by his audacity, quickly turned dismissive. "Mr. Vance doesn't see unsolicited visitors, especially not about medical matters. He has the best—" "I know," John said, his voice calm but firm. "And I'm not here to sell him anything. I'm here because I believe I can help his daughter." He handed over the folder. It contained not medical degrees, but testimonials from families whose children he had helped, not with cures, but with renewed hope, improved mobility, and a profound shift in their outlook. There were also photos of Lily, laughing, painting, living a full life despite her challenges. The folder, surprisingly, made its way to Richard Vance's desk. He skimmed its contents, a cynical smirk playing on his lips. A carpenter, a caregiver, this is a joke. Another charlatan trying to exploit my desperation. He was about to toss it aside when a particular photo caught his eye. A young girl with a radiant smile, her hands covered in paint, her wheelchair almost invisible behind her joy. Something about her unbridled spirit, so unlike Amelia's current despondency, made him pause. He remembered the endless, sterile discussions with doctors, the cold, clinical assessments. He remembered Amelia's silence. "Bring him in," Richard commanded his assistant, a flicker of something he couldn't quite name stirring within him. It wasn't hope, not yet. Perhaps morbid curiosity. John was led into Richard's cavernous study, a room that dwarfed him with its grandeur. Richard sat behind a colossal mahogany desk, his expression a mask of wary skepticism. "Mr. Carter," Richard began, his voice clipped, "I appreciate your initiative. But as you can see, we have exhausted every conceivable avenue. My daughter is under the care of the world's most brilliant minds. What exactly do you propose you can do that they cannot?" John met his gaze, unflinching. "Mr. Vance, with all due respect, those brilliant minds are looking at a broken body. I want to look at a whole person. I've worked with children, with adults who have faced similar challenges. I've seen that sometimes the greatest barriers aren't physical, but mental. They're about finding a reason to fight, to connect, to believe in possibilities, even when the body says no." Richard scoffed, "And you believe you can instill this reason, where years of therapy and psychological counseling have failed? My daughter hasn't spoken more than a handful of words in months." "I don't promise miracles, Mr. Vance," John said, his voice softening. "I promise presence, patience, and a different perspective. I've learned from my own daughter that the human spirit is incredibly resilient. Sometimes it just needs a different kind of nudge. Let me help her." The words hung in the air, simple, earnest, and utterly devoid of the usual professional jargon Richard was accustomed to. Let me help her. It wasn't a demand or a boast, but a quiet plea, an offer of shared burden. Richard looked at the photo of Lily again, her vibrant smile. He looked at John, a man who clearly understood struggle, yet carried himself within quiet strength. He was desperate, and in that desperation, a tiny seed of irrational hope began to sprout. "Very well," Risha said, surprising himself. "1 week, if there's any, and I mean any, sign of progress, you can stay. If not, you leave, and you sign a non-disclosure agreement. No publicities, no stories." John nodded. "Agreed." The next morning, John Carter walked into Amelia's meticulously sterile room. She lay motionless, her eyes fixed on the ceiling, a silent sentinel of her despair. Her full-time nurse, Ms. Davies, a stern woman with a perpetually worried frown, hovered nearby. Amelia said gently, pulling a chair close to her bed. He didn't rush, didn't try to force a smile. He simply sat, his presence calm and steady. "My name is John. I'm not a doctor. I'm just here to spend some time with you, if that's okay." Amelia didn't respond. Her eyes remained fixed. John didn't push. He simply began to talk, not about her condition, or therapy, or recovery, but about the world outside. He spoke of the changing seasons, the sound of rain on the tin roof, the smell of freshly cut wood, the joy of his daughter Lily's laughter. He described the vibrant street where his garage was, the characters who frequented it, the small triumphs of fixing a broken engine. He spoke of challenges, of finding strength in unexpected places, of the small, everyday beauties that often went unnoticed. He didn't demand a response. He simply offered a connection. On the third day, something shifted. John was describing a particularly stubborn piece of wood he was trying to shape for a custom cabinet. "It just wouldn't bend," he mused. "No matter how much pressure I put on it." Then I realized it wasn't about forcing it. It was about finding its natural grain, understanding its resistance, and working with it. Amelia's eyes, which had been distant, flickered. A tiny, almost imperceptible tremor ran through her right hand, a reflex, perhaps, but John saw it. He didn't react, didn't make a fuss. He simply continued his story, his voice a soothing balm. Later that day, he brought in a small, smooth river stone. "This," he said, placing it gently on her chest, "is a worry stone. Lily loves them. When things feel overwhelming, she just holds it. It reminds her that even the hardest things have a smooth side if you just keep rubbing." Amelia's gaze dropped to the stone. Her eyes lingered on it. For the first time, a flicker of something other than despair. Curiosity, perhaps, or a faint echo of her old self appeared. Over the next few days, John introduced small, unconventional elements into her sterile routine. He brought in a small pot of basil, its pungent aroma filling the room. He played soft, melodic music, not the classical pieces her father preferred, but folk tunes, blues, songs with stories. He encouraged her to listen, to imagine, to feel. He didn't talk about movement, but about sensation, about the warmth of the sun on her face, the texture of a soft blanket, the taste of a fresh strawberry. He started a simple exercise. He would hold a small, colorful feather just above her face and encourage her, with only her breath, to make it dance. It was agonizingly slow, frustratingly difficult. But one afternoon, after nearly an hour of silent concentration, the feather trembled, then twitched, then, with a barely visible puff of air from Amelia's lips, it danced, a tiny, almost imperceptible victory. But it was a victory nonetheless. Miss Davies, initially skeptical and even resentful of John's presence, began to observe him with a grudging respect. She saw the subtle changes in Amelia, the way her eyes followed John, the faint, almost imperceptible shifts in her breathing when he spoke. At the end of the week, Richard Vance returned to Amelia's room, expecting to dismiss John. He found Amelia not staring at the ceiling, but looking at John, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips and on her chest, the river stone. "Amelia," Richa asked, his voice trembling. "How are you?" Amelia's eyes met his, and then a whisper so faint he almost missed it, but undeniably there. "Better, dead," Richard gasped. He hadn't heard her speak in months. Tears welled in his eyes. He looked at John, his face a mixture of profound gratitude and utter disbelief. "Shh," she spoke, Richard whispered, his voice thick with emotion. John nodded, a gentle smile on his face. "She has a lot to say, Mr. Vance. We just need to listen differently." From that day forward, John became an indispensable part of Amelia's life. His methods were unorthodox, a blend of sensory stimulation, gentle motivation, and an unwavering belief in her inherent strength. He didn't push for grand movements, but celebrated the smallest twitch of a muscle, the faintest flicker of sensation. He brought Lily to visit, and the two girls, one in a custom bed, the other in a wheelchair, formed an unlikely bond, sharing stories, laughter, and a silent understanding that transcended their physical limitations. John introduced Amelia to adaptive painting, holding brushes for her, guiding her hand with delicate precision as she learned to express herself through art again. He brought in a small, portable hydroponic garden, allowing her to feel the soil, smell the herbs, and witness life growing around her. He taught her mindfulness exercises, helping her reconnect with her body, not as a broken vessel, but as a complex, interconnected system. The physical progress was slow, agonizingly so, but it was there. First, a tiny, involuntary twitch in a finger, then the ability to slightly move her wrist. Months turned into a year, then to Richard Vance funded cutting-edge research, but it was John's consistent, empathetic presence that truly fueled Amelia's spirit. He was her anchor, her guide, her unwavering belief. One crisp autumn morning, nearly 3 years after the accident, Amelia sat in a specialized power wheelchair, her own hand, though still weak, guiding the joystick. She was in the mansion's sprawling garden, the sunlight warm on her face. She still had a long way to go, but she was no longer she could move her arms, feed herself, even paint with a modified brush. Richard Vance watched her from a distance, a profound sense of awe and humility washing over him. His billions had bought the best medical care, but it was the quiet, unassuming single dad, the carpenter, who had truly healed his daughter. John hadn't fixed her body with a miracle, but he had reignited her spirit, teaching her, and Richard, that true strength lay not in power or wealth, but in resilience, empathy, and the unwavering belief in the human capacity for healing. Amelia looked at John, who stood beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "Thank you, John," she said, her voice clear, strong. "You didn't just help me. You saved me." John smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corner. "You saved yourself, Amelia. I just reminded you how." He looked at Richard, who was now approaching them, a changed man. The billionaire, once cold and distant, now carried a warmth in his eyes, a newfound appreciation for the unseen edges of life, the quiet heroes, and the priceless gift of human connection. The mansion, once a sterile prison, now felt like a home, filled with the quiet hum of hope and the vibrant pulse of a life, once broken, now beautifully, resiliently rebuilt.